The courtroom went silent when an 8-year-old boy stood up, held out a worn legal pad, and calmly said, "I'd like to speak for my mom." Marcus Chen was 8, maybe 8.5, skinny, hair cut low, backpack still slung over one shoulder. His feet dangled above the floor as he sat next to his mom at the defense table. A tattered legal pad rested on his lap, pages folded and creased. Judge Denise Weller had just called the case, Chen v. Rodriguez, and asked if the assigned public defender was present. Nobody stood. After a long, uncomfortable pause, the judge sighed and glanced at Lily Chen, sitting stiff beside her son. "No representation today?" Lily opened her mouth, but no words came. Her hands gripped her knees so tightly her knuckles went pale. That's when Marcus stood. "Excuse me," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "Can I say something for my mom?" The room got quiet. Judge Weller blinked, caught off guard. "Young man, this isn't really—" "I just want to say a few things," Marcus added. "She didn't do anything wrong, but nobody's here to help her. I've read everything." There was a beat. Then a soft scoff came from the landlord's attorney, James Coulson. Marcus didn't flinch. "I brought notes," he said, pulling the legal pad up. "They said we could get help, but nobody came." Judge Weller sat up straighter. "You want to represent your mother?" "I just want to help her, just for today. I know I'm not a lawyer." The judge paused. She glanced around the courtroom. "Approach the bench, please. Just you." Marcus walked up, small sneakers squeaking. He looked up at the judge without fear, just purpose. "You understand this isn't a game, right?" "Yes, ma'am." "You understand this is a legal hearing about whether your mother gets to stay in her home?" "Yes, ma'am. And I've read about the Fair Housing Act and how they gave her notice wrong. They posted it too soon after the complaint. We have proof." There was something about the way he said, "we have proof," that made Judge Weller sit back. "You may proceed," she said finally. Marcus turned back to the room and stood beside his mother's chair. Then he began. "On March 12th, my mom told Mr. Rodriguez about the mold in the bathroom. She took pictures. She sent a letter by email. He didn't fix anything. Then 2 weeks later, we got a paper saying we were being evicted for damage to the unit. But we didn't cause the damage. It was already there." He flipped to another page. "Florida Statute 83.56 says a landlord has to give written notice in 7 days to fix the problem. But we didn't get a warning. We got a threat." People leaned forward. Coulson scribbled notes. Marcus kept going, clear and deliberate. "My mom works 2 jobs. She doesn't have time to fight people, but she asked for help and nobody helped, so I watched videos. I read what I could. I think the law says we should get a chance." He paused. "Am I allowed to object if something they say isn't true?" The courtroom finally broke. Audible gasps. Judge Weller's lips twitched slightly. "You may continue," she said quietly. Lily Chen didn't grow up imagining she'd be standing in front of a judge with her child next to her. Born in Seattle, she moved to Pensacola in her 20s and had Marcus when she was 24. She got her CNA license and worked overnight shifts at the hospital. Life hadn't given her much, but she made it work. They lived modestly in a 2-bedroom apartment on West Avery Street. She always made sure Marcus had books, pencils, and lunch money, even if she skipped her own lunch to make it happen. Then everything started falling apart. A pipe burst under the kitchen sink. Maintenance came a week later, barely looked, and never returned. Mold crept up behind the cabinets. The bathroom ceiling leaked wet, and it rained and Marcus started coughing at night. Lily sent photos, wrote emails, filed complaints. Nothing changed. When she finally got landlord Carlos Rodriguez on the line, he told her she was being too difficult. That's when she knew he wanted her out. She filed a complaint with the city, but Rodriguez moved first. An eviction notice appeared taped to her door on a Tuesday morning. Marcus saw it before she did. Lily contacted legal aid, waited 3 weeks. They gave her a public defender who seemed nice but overwhelmed. He told her not to worry. Someone would be there. Meanwhile, Marcus was paying attention. He watched her every night, trying to make sense of the lease, Googling legal terms. She thought he was just doing homework. But he was listening. Always listening. She'd find scribbled notes in his notebooks. Words like statute, tenant rights, mold clause. She figured it was just his way of understanding. She never imagined he was studying. The apartment had started falling apart long before. They'd moved in 3 years earlier. It wasn't perfect, but it was all she could afford. At first, Rodriguez had been professional enough. That changed after the 2nd year. The little issues stopped being little. The refrigerator ticked loudly. Windows wouldn't close. The water heater acted up. When Lily called, she got voicemail. She started documenting everything, every call, every unanswered email, photos, videos. One night, the toilet backed up and flooded the bathroom. The drywall near the baseboards was already peeling. Marcus was coughing more by then. She tried to clean the mold with vinegar and baking soda, but it kept coming back. Still, she paid rent on time every month. The final straw came after she filed a complaint with Housing Code Enforcement. Rodriguez stopped returning calls altogether. Days later, someone left a notice on her door claiming she had violated lease terms. The reason? Excessive damage to property. A week later, she received an OTS, official eviction letter. Marcus saw her crying that night. He didn't say anything at first. Then he looked her in the eye. "Are we going to be okay?" She smiled. "Of course we are." "You're lying," he said. Not with anger, just certainty. She laughed a little. "I'm trying not to." He nodded, then pulled his notebook closer. "I don't think he's allowed to do this. I read that they have to give you a chance to fix things first." She blinked. "You read what?" "I was looking online. I saw a video about renters' rights." That night, after he went to bed, she picked up his notebook and flipped through the pages. They were filled with notes. Not schoolwork, but observations, quotes from websites, references to laws. 7-day notice required by statute. No retaliation for reporting issues. Mold is health hazard. Her son had been reading law. A part of her felt something shift. Marcus had always been sharp, but this was different. She didn't know it yet, but he was preparing. Marcus had always been quiet, not shy, just observant. The day the eviction notice came, something switched in him. He sat down and started writing. While Lily stressed over calls, Marcus was reading. When she went to work, he'd sit at her old laptop watching hours of legal advice on YouTube, tenant rights, court procedures, lease agreements. He didn't tell his mom. He didn't want to worry her. But every night after dinner he would take the legal pad and copy notes he had memorized. Sometimes he stayed up late with a flashlight under his blanket, whispering lines to himself. He wasn't playing lawyer. He was preparing for war. During a Sunday library visit, Marcus found a book, Your Rights as a Renter in Florida. He started highlighting passages. By the time they left, he had 4 pages copied by hand. Lily asked what he was doing. "Making a cheat sheet." "For what?" "In case you need help talking in court." She ruffled his hair. "That's sweet, baby, but the lawyer will do that." Marcus didn't answer. He knew better. The night before the hearing, Lily fell asleep at the table. Marcus tiptoed around, organizing documents. He labeled everything with colored tabs to match the timeline he had memorized. He whispered as he worked, March 12th, complaint submitted. March 15th, email with photos. March 27th, retaliatory eviction notice. He didn't sleep much. He just stared at the ceiling, thinking about their apartment, his books, the solar system taped to his wall. and his mom trying so hard every day to pretend she wasn't afraid. By sunrise, he had made his decision. He wasn't going to sit there and watch them lose everything. It was just after 9 a.m. when they stepped into Escambia County Courthouse, room 2B. Lily held her folder against her chest like armor. Marcus carried his backpack and the legal pad. The clerk read names. People shuffled forward, their cases taking minutes, sometimes seconds. It was fast, unforgiving. Then came the words, Chen v. Rodriguez. Lily stood, heart hammering. She looked to the side, expecting her court-appointed lawyer. He wasn't there. Judge Weller glanced around. Representation for Miss Chen? No response. Lily opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Marcus stood before she could. Your Honor, he said, stepping forward. Can I say something for my mom? The judge blinked. Excuse me? I want to speak on her behalf. Just today. Lily reached for him. Marcus, baby, sit down. He didn't. A few quiet chuckles rippled through the room. The landlord's attorney, James Coulson, smirked. Marcus didn't move. I've read everything, he said calmly. I understand the timeline. I know what she's being accused of. I think I can explain what really happened. Judge Weller folded her hands. How old are you? 8, but I'm almost 9. That drew louder laughter. Marcus didn't blink. Your Honor, we don't have anyone else. My mom didn't do anything wrong. She asked for help. Nobody came. I just want to say what I know. The judge leaned back slowly. Approached the bench. Marcus stepped forward. She bent forward, voice low. Do you know what a hearing is? Yes, ma'am. I know this is real. I'm not pretending. And what would you say if I let you speak? I'd start with the dates, then the pictures, then the lease terms, then I'd talk about the repairs that never happened. Judge Weller looked at him for a long time. Then she said, Go ahead. Marcus turned, walked back, and positioned himself next to his mom. My name is Marcus Chen, he said, projecting louder. I'm here to speak for my mom because nobody else showed up to do it. He opened the legal pad. On March 12th, she emailed the property office about the mold in our kitchen. On March 14th, they replied saying they'd send someone. No one came. On March 20th, the leak got worse. I recorded a video. We still have it. He flipped the page. Then on March 27th, we got a notice saying we were being evicted because we caused the damage. But that's not true. We told them before it got bad. We have proof. His voice didn't shake. He didn't rush. He referenced specific clauses in the lease agreement and cited Florida Statute 83.51, which requires landlords to maintain livable property. He pointed out how the timeline didn't line up, how the landlord failed to act, and how the notice was issued in retaliation. When Coulson objected, Judge Weller raised a hand. Let him finish. Marcus looked at her and asked, Am I allowed to object if something they say isn't true? A hush fell across the courtroom. Judge Weller let out a slow exhale. Yes, she said softly. You may continue. Marcus didn't pace or wave his arms. He stood still, one hand gripping the legal pad, flipping each page carefully. My mom didn't get the 7-day notice the lease talks about. They just gave her the eviction. We didn't get time to fix anything, even though she asked. Judge Weller leaned forward. The courtroom had gone completely quiet. Even Coulson had stopped taking notes. There's also a law about mold, Marcus said. I wrote it down here. It says landlords have to make sure the unit is safe and that they can't retaliate if you complain. But my mom did report it, and we have the emails. He held up printout photos. Mold around the bathtub. Water pooling in the ceiling. Timestamps still visible. Coulson finally stood. Your Honor, with all due respect, this child is... Before he could finish, Marcus said, That's the man who said we broke the apartment, but we didn't. It was already like that. He never fixed it. Coulson raised a brow. Your Honor, I'd like to remind the court this is an informal presentation. There is no sworn testimony. And Mr. Coulson, Judge Weller cut in. You'll get your turn. Coulson sat down slowly. Marcus returned to his notes. My mom doesn't yell at people. She doesn't fight. She just works. Sometimes she works all night and still makes me pancakes before school. She called the number in the lease 3 times. Nobody ever came. He paused. She cried when she got that letter. I heard her. She never cries. Lily looked down at her hands, eyes glassy. I think if we had a lawyer, he would have said this better. But nobody came, so I had to do it because she didn't do anything wrong. She just wanted someone to fix the mold, and they're trying to kick us out. He closed the legal pad. That was it. No grand ending, just a little boy trying to stop his world from collapsing. Judge Weller didn't speak right away. She looked at Lily, then at Coulson, then back at Marcus. Do you have the documents you mentioned? She asked him. Marcus nodded and handed over a neatly labeled folder. Emails, lease, photos, notes. She took it without comment. I'm calling a recess. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. The gavel tapped once. As she passed the defense table, she said nothing to anyone. Jew sent one thing to Marcus. You were heard. Marcus looked at his mom, unsure of what that meant. But Lily's hand reached for his, gripping it tightly. Outside, people were whispering. A reporter scribbled notes furiously. Marcus didn't notice. He just reached into his backpack and pulled out a peanut butter sandwich. I'm hungry, he said. Lily laughed for the first time in days. When they stepped back into the courtroom, the energy had changed. Judge Weller returned with a small stack of papers, Marcus's folder among them. I've reviewed the materials submitted by the Chen family. I've also taken note of the defendant's absence of counsel this morning and the effort made to proceed regardless. She addressed Coulson. Mr. Coulson, do you have anything to submit before we continue? Coulson stood, visibly flustered. Your Honor, while I acknowledge the child's effort, I must emphasize that this is an eviction case based on physical damage to the property. Do you have dated maintenance records? The judge asked. Coulson hesitated. Not at this time. Warning letters? No, Your Honor. Judge Weller flipped through the folder again. Then I will consider the timeline presented by the Chen family as credible, especially given the landlord's failure to respond to formal complaints prior to filing the eviction. Coulson sat down without a word. Judge Weller continued. Due to the lack of sufficient documentation from the plaintiff, the court finds no grounds to support the claim of tenant-caused damage. The eviction notice is hereby dismissed. It took a full second before the room reacted. 2 women in the gallery let out soft cheers. Marcus didn't move. Lily put a hand over her mouth and whispered, We won. He nodded. You did. Judge Weller looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Chen, I don't believe I've ever had someone your age speak in this courtroom the way you did Toddy, eh? That took courage and preparation. You should be proud. He nodded, still composed, but his hand reached under the table and grabbed his mom's. He didn't let go. After court adjourned, people approached them, strangers with questions, others offering handshakes. Marcus seemed overwhelmed but polite, answering every, How old are you? And where'd you learn all that? With the same quiet response, I just paid attention. Outside the courthouse, a reporter approached. Can we get a quick interview? Marcus hesitated. Lily started to decline, but Marcus said, Okay. The reporter crouched to his level. What made you decide to speak for your mom today? Marcus looked at his mother first, then back at the reporter. Because nobody else was going to. That clip aired on the 6 p.m. news. Within hours, it hit social media. By the next morning, #Marcus Chen was trending. Local news turned national. Lawyers offered to represent them pro bono. Housing advocates began quoting Marcus's line. He didn't care about any of it. All he wanted was to go home and eat dinner with his mom without wondering if someone was going to knock and tell them to leave. In the days that followed, what happened inside Courtroom 2B didn't just stay in Florida. It lit a fuse. National networks ran the clip on repeat. But while the world reacted with awe, something else happened. People began asking why this had to happen in the first place. Why had a mother with a legitimate complaint been brushed off? Why was her case handed to a public defender with no time to read it? Why did it take an 8-year-old to get a judge's attention? By the end of the week, the Pensacola Legal Aid Office was flooded with angry emails. One local representative called for an audit into eviction procedures. Carlos Rodriguez suddenly had a spotlight he didn't ask for. A few tenants from other properties came forward with similar stories. The judge's ruling didn't set new law, but it set a tone. People were examining a system. Marcus and Lily stayed mostly quiet. They turned down most inter-aras views. "I'm not a lawyer," he told one reporter. "I just didn't want us to lose our home." Behind the scenes, change began to stir. A local attorney named Melinda Charles reached out to offer full representation. "This isn't a one-time thing," she told them. "What happened to you is happening all over this city." Lily nodded. "But most people don't have a Marcus." Melinda helped them submit formal complaints and filed a motion requesting damages. School was strange for a while. Teachers congratulated Marcus. Other kids asked if he was going to be on TV again. One student made a joke that stung. He didn't respond. He just went back to writing in his notebook. He hadn't done it for attention. He'd done it because he didn't want to watch his mother be silenced. What he did caused a crack in the wall, but the wall was still there. Still, cracks let light in. A week later, Lily received a call asking if she would speak at a panel for tenant rights reform. She hesitated. "I'm not really that type of person." But Marcus asked her to say yes. "You don't have to be the loudest. You just have to be the one who shows up." So she agreed. She sat at the event clutching her notes, Marcus beside her in a clean white polo. She told her story, what it felt like to be ignored, what it meant to be heard, and what it meant to have your child step in when nobody else would. When she finished, the room stood to applaud. The noise died down eventually. The headlines faded. Marcus was no longer the boy in the courtroom, at least not in the public's eye. But nothing really went back to the way it was. A few weeks after the hearing, their mailbox held something new. A letter from the landlord's attorney. Rodriguez would not pursue further legal action. The Chen family was free to remain until their lease expired. But staying wasn't what Lily wanted anymore. The fight had changed her. She called Melinda and asked for advice on housing relocation programs. Melinda connected her with a program for essential workers offering subsidized rent. They moved 2 months later, a small 2-bedroom on Coral Hill Lane. New paint, working locks, a dryer that worked. Marcus got his own desk. Lily got a bathtub that didn't leak. Marcus started 5th grade that fall. Nothing about him looked different, but everything about him was. He wasn't louder. He was still the same kid who raised his hand when he had something to say. But now people listened when he spoke. One night, while Lily was finishing dishes, Marcus stood in the doorway holding his folder. "Can I throw this out now?" She walked over and flipped through it slowly. She paused at one page, the words, "Nobody else was going to," underlined twice. "Keep it," she said finally. "Not because we need it anymore, but because one day when someone else needs help, you'll remember what you're capable of." Marcus nodded and tucked it back in his backpack. Later that evening, they sat on the couch, dinner plates cleared, cartoons playing low. Marcus leaned against her and asked, "Do you think I could ever be a lawyer?" She turned to look at him. "You already were one. You just didn't get paid." He laughed. She laughed too. And that was the first time in a long time that things felt light. The experience hadn't made them rich. It hadn't brought justice to every other family fighting a similar battle. But it gave them something real. Dignity. The kind that comes from knowing you stood your ground and told the truth. Marcus didn't need the world's applause. He just needed a place where he and his mom could sit in peace with the front door locked and nobody trying to take it from them. And he got that. In the end, the lesson wasn't just about law or housing or courtrooms. It was about love, about showing up when it matters, about being small in a room full of adults and deciding to speak anyway. So the next time someone tells you a child can't understand what's going on, think of Marcus Chen. Because when everyone else sat quiet, he raised his hand and changed everything.